we go. It's to our God. Every word of worship. With one accord.
Sacred music illustrates the central role that music plays in African American spiritual and religious life. Its lyrics serve to offer comfort, teach virtue, relay history and doctrine, and celebrate special days. Spirituals and gospel music are two subgenres of sacred music. Spirituals began as memorized Bible stories that were translated to song and passed from one slave generation to the next. These songs were meant to impart Christian values and convey the hardships of slavery. Beginning in the late 1800s, ensembles such as the Fisk Jubilee Singers popularized spirituals, bringing them to a wider audience. Gospel music, which originated in the Black church, functions as an integral religious and ceremonial practice that draws on contemporary secular sounds while still conveying spiritual and religious ideas. Today, sacred and gospel music continue to play an important role in Black culture, with artists like Hezekiah Walker, Tasha Cobbs Leonard, and Everett McCorvey bringing these sounds and traditions to a new generation.
Didn't it rain, children? Oh, yes. Didn't it? You know, didn't it? Oh, my Lord, didn't it rain?
African American folk music links back to African cultural traditions. From field hollers to work chants and game songs, folk music bursts with social commentary. Stemming from shanties, which are a Black folk choral singing style, African American folk songs originally accompanied slave labor, such as picking cotton and laying railroad tracks. The singing and its cadence were meant to ward off fatigue, lift the spirits of the workers, and help the slower workers keep up. With the publication of Black abolitionist, musician, and author Solomon Northup's memoir, 12 Years a Slave, Black folk music was introduced to a wider audience and began to address social and societal issues facing Black Americans. In the post-slavery era, contemporary folk artists such as Odetta, Jake Blount, and Tracy Chapman continue to carry on the rich tradition of African American folk music.
Water rising in the morning, water rising.
Now they tell me that the streets of heaven are paved with diamonds and gold.
The blues, a genre of music that originated in the deep south of the United States, incorporates spirituals, work songs, field hollers, shouts, chants, and rhymed narrative ballads to form the foundation of contemporary American music. The term blues may have originated from blue devils, meaning melancholy and sadness, with the use of this term in African American music dating back to 1912. As with sacred and folk music, the blues greatly influenced the cultural and social lives of African Americans. Geographically diverse incarnations of the blues arose in various regions, including the Mississippi Delta, where artists such as Muddy Waters and Charlie Patton crafted their lyrics and sound to illustrate the poverty of the region, while also celebrating its natural and cultural richness. Today, blues artists like Shemekia Copeland and Christone Kingfish Ingram use their talents to pay homage to this genre of music that Ingram lovingly refers to as the grandchild of rap.
But I've been converted, and I got the spirit.
Jazz music evolved from ragtime, an American style of syncopated instrumental music. Jazz first materialized in the African American communities of New Orleans, Louisiana, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and is often distinguished by African American musical innovation. Saxophonist, bandleader, and composer John Coltrane is among the most influential and acclaimed figures in the history of jazz. His compositions have had a significant impact on the multiple forms of the genre that exist today, from the dance-oriented music of the 1920s big band era to the experimental flair of modern avant-garde jazz. Current jazz artists such as Marcus Anderson have collaborated with legendary musicians like Prince to bring the smooth, soulful sound of this genre to a wider audience.
Deep down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens, there stood a log cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read or write.
Rock and roll music incorporates elements from all African American music genres and combines them with American pop and country music components. While rock and roll's formative elements can be heard in blues records from the 1920s and in country records of the 1930s, the genre did not acquire its name until 1954. In the mid-1950s, Chuck Berry, who is often credited as the father of rock and roll, introduced an aggressive guitar sound and established the electric guitar as the centerpiece of this musical genre. Because the popularization of rock and roll involved both black performers reaching a white audience and white musicians performing African American music, the evolution of this genre played an integral role in race relations during this time period, particularly between black youths and their white counterparts. We can still hear the contributions of many of rock and roll's pioneering black artists in the riffs and runs of today's popular music.
Good day in my mind, seem to take a step out. Get some air now, let your edge out. To some iceberg, you'll be heavy in my mind. Can you get the heck out?
Rhythm and blues is another stylistically diverse genre with roots in jazz, the blues, and gospel music. R&B lyrical themes often encapsulate the African American history and experience of pain and the quest for freedom and joy, as well as triumphs and failures in terms of societal racism, oppression, relationships, economics, and aspirations. R&B helped spread African American culture and popularize the idea of racial integration on the airwaves and in white society. Early R&B artists like Etta James and Jackie Wilson paved the way for contemporary artists like her, Jasmine Sullivan, Khalid, and John Legend, who today perform an iteration of the genre that has added characteristics of soul and funk to the original jazz, blues, and gospel sound.
Faces I disappear if you let me. What you want, baby, I got it. What you need, you know I got it. All I'm asking is for a little respect when you come home.
Soul music is a popular music genre that originated in the African American community throughout the United States in the late 1950s and early 1960s. It also has its roots in African American gospel music and R&B. Soul music is a collective term for several forms of pop music that Black Americans pioneered from the mid-20th century onward. Genres grouped under the soul banner include R&B, urban blues, Motown, smooth jazz, and gospel. During this era, many forms of soul music entwined with the civil rights movement, as Black pop musicians sought to connect their art to the social and political struggles of the era. These musicians included soul pioneers of the 1950s such as Ray Charles, Etta James, Sam Cooke, Clyde McPhatter, Little Richard, and Hank Ballard. Much of soul music's growth and evolution is specific to particular cities and regions. Southern soul centered in Memphis. Detroit soul is the birthplace of Motown and Motown Records, and New York was the birthplace of Atlantic Records, whose major artists included Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, and Solomon Burke.
And guess what? So is my money. I've never been.
Funk music is a style of dance music that evolved from the Black R&B, soul, and jazz scenes in the mid-1960s. Funk music is characterized by funky, syncopated bass lines and steady, infectious drum grooves, which drove it to become one of the most popular genres in the 1970s and 1980s. Funk artists like James Brown, Bootsy Collins, and George Clinton, the leader of Parliament Funkadelic, inspired many musicians and helped spawn genres like disco, hip-hop, and even funk metal. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, James Brown developed a signature rhythm called Playing on the One, which emphasized the first downbeat of the measure. Several dedicated funk bands emerged by the late 1960s, including Sly and the Family Stone, who brought a psychedelic element to the genre, and Parliament Funkadelic's George Clinton, who in his work with the band developed a style known as P-Funk, which mixed psychedelia and Afrocentric messaging. Chaka Khan emerged as the queen of funk with her band Rufus, and Rick James released the funk hit Super Freak.
This speech is my recital. I think it's very vital to rock
Around.
That's right.
On time.
It's tricky. It's the tight. Here we go. It's tricky to rock around. To rock around. That's right. On time. It's tricky. It's tricky.
Hip-hop as music and culture formed during the 1970s in New York City from the multicultural exchange between African American youth from the United States and young immigrants and children of immigrants from countries in the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica. Hip-hop is a subculture and an art movement that emerged from the Bronx in New York City during the early 1970s. As hip-hop artist KRS once said, "Rap is something you do. Hip-hop is something you live." Its development reflected the negative effects of post-industrial decline, political discourse, and a rapidly changing economy. One of the most influential hip-hop pioneers was DJ Kool Herc, a Jamaican immigrant regarded as the founding father of hip-hop. Other noted pioneers of the genre are Afrika Bambaataa and Grandmaster Flash. Together, they make up the holy trinity of hip-hop. Since its inception, hip-hop has birthed dozens of subgenres, including trap, grime, gangsta rap, rap rock or nu metal, crunk, chill hop, bounce, mumble rap, Latin hip-hop, and conscious hip-hop. Other notable hip-hop artists and acts include Tupac Shakur, Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj, LL Cool J, Missy Elliott, and J. Cole.
When I wake up, people take up mostly all of my time. I'm not singing, funky, ringing, cause I make up a rhyme.
June is African American Music Appreciation Month. President Jimmy Carter created this in 1979 to celebrate the African American musical influence that comprise an essential part of our nation's treasured cultural heritage.